Okay, here we go. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for coming. Do you come every week?
Yes.
Very nice. What's the longest anyone's been coming? Yes. 7 months. 7 months. Nice. So my name is Yadubara, and I'm often known as the husband of Vishaka Devi, and she's she made the films with me, husband and wife team, made many films in the early days. We produced films instead of children, and then after 12 years we had 2 daughters. So we had a late start. But she's now the president of the Bhaktivedanta Manor, which is quite a unusual occurrence because she's never been a president before. But somehow they chose her. And the Bhaktivedanta Manor is was the very beautiful house manor given by George Harrison in 1973. George Harrison. How many have heard of George Harrison? Not that many. He was one of the Beatles. You heard of the Beatles? Beatles, like insects. Beetle. They were a huge rock group in the 60s and 70s. They were so popular. Anyway, George was a very spiritual person, and he donated this beautiful property to the devotees. So our beginning, I was always fascinated as a photographer as a reporter. I did an article for Asia magazine on the Hare Krishna movement in New York. And that was in the summer of 1970. And I was very attracted to the movement. So Vishaka, who was then Jean, we were both Jean and John, we had didn't know anything about Hare Krishna, but Jean was didn't like it at all. In fact, she was raised an atheist. And so I liked it. So there's a little bit of strain in the relationship. But we were both in photography school, and I decided to do my master's thesis on the Hare Krishna movement in India. So this is the Brooklyn Temple in the early days. This is where we did our article. And then a few months later, I went to India to join Prabhupada on his World Sankirtan mission. Prabhupada, this is the first batch of Westerners Prabhupada took back to India, about 25 devotees. And they had been traveling for a few months before I met them, but they crisscrossed all over India holding programs, big Pandal programs and programs in towns. And wherever they went, the people were just stunned and fascinated to see Western Vaishnavas. They'd never seen this before. And can you imagine, after hundreds of years of suppression by foreign rule, finally Vaishnavas were arriving on their shores. And so anyway, devotees went all over India holding programs, with Prabhupada. And wherever they went by train, wherever they went, they jumped down off the cars and onto the platform and started Harinam. And then the train, for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, however long the train stopped. And hundreds of people would gather. We know if anything unusual goes on in India, and hundreds of people immediately come. So anyway, very quickly all over India, the word got out that there were Western Vaishnavas had come. They were just amazed. So I met Prabhupada in the town of Surat, Gujarat, and I wanted to do my master's thesis on their travels in India. So I asked Prabhupada if I could stay with them And he said, "Are you going to become a devotee?" And I said, "I don't think so, Prabhupada, because this is me then, a crow amongst swans." And Prabhupada said, "I don't think so." So anyway, I had no place to stay, so I spent the night. I had no place to go. I didn't know anyone. I spent the night. I got up the next morning, and nobody said anything, and I stayed for 2 months. So Prabhupada could understand that there was some little spark of interest, and he would fan that spark no matter how small. So this is the second night in Surat. You can see thousands and thousands of people came for this program. And then every day in the newspaper would print the route to the Harinam. We were there for about 2 weeks. And the people would decorate the streets before the Harinam party came. You can just see the eagerness of people to receive the devotees. We could not walk more than a few yards before people came out, and they offered garlands and sandalwood paste and drinks and did arti to the party. Amazing. It was such a contrast to taking pictures in New York City. Yeah, big contrast. They didn't get this kind of welcome in the West. And this is Malati Devi, early disciple of Prabhupada. She was Prabhupada's cook for quite a few years. Prabhupada taking his morning walk. He always took his morning walk and massage and preaching and translation every day without fail. If you knew where Prabhupada was in a certain part of the world and knew the time, you knew what he was doing, because he was doing the same thing every day. That's how he got so much done. Very regulated. These are Boy Scouts doing Harinam. Many of these pictures are taken from individual movie frames. You know that movies run at 24 frames a second. You probably don't know this because the technology has changed. Anyway, if you take a film, it's 24 frames a second. So we made still photos from these little tiny pictures, movie frames. I was taking black and white pictures for my master's thesis. In this particular lecture, Prabhupada was so animated in his gestures, so I took maybe, 30 or 40 pictures of Prabhupada's gestures while he was speaking. And Prabhupada was tireless in his preaching. There would be many engagements per day. This is in Prabhupada's room. We only have one picture of this. It's very dark. It was Mangal Arti time. So all the devotees, 25 devotees in quite a small room. It's probably the most intense Mangal Arti I've ever attended, with Prabhupada presence. Again, preaching all the time, giving Krishna's message. That Mataji in the back, her name was Koshali Devi. She knew the Isha Upanishad by heart, and Prabhupada would often ask her to sing it. Very beautiful. So the man just to the right of the person giving pranams to Prabhupada, this person here, his name is Mr. Jariwala. He was our host. So we all stayed in his home. He had a 3-story house. He was a banker. And very humble man. He would just serve and serve and serve. That's all he would do for a couple of weeks. So just when we were leaving, he came out and he, said goodbye to everyone. And he said he asked for our forgiveness for any offenses we committed. So rather than commit offense to him, we committed offenses to him and his family by our immature behavior. We didn't know the Vaishnava culture very well. So he was very, very humble. And he actually started to cry when he asked for forgiveness for his offenses. So Prabhupada turned to us, he looked at us, he said, "This is the Vaishnava." Very humble man. Humility is very important. And then we went to Kumbh Mela, 1971, February. Very, very cold. And Prabhupada had us do 3 things: the Harinam Sankirtan every day, morning and evening, deity worship, prasadam distribution, and book distribution. There were very few books actually, but we did something. That's little Saraswati on her father's shoulders, Shamsundar Prabhu. Whenever she would hear the kirtan, she would bring her arms in the air and chant very enthusiastically. Prabhupada says she was a great preacher. She would come up to people and pull on their sari or dhoti and say, "Guess what?" And they would look down and they'd say, "What?" And she would say, "Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and you should surrender to Him." Great preacher. And so Prabhupada could have stayed anywhere, but he stayed with us, very cold condition in a tent. We know that Prabhupada in Allahabad, this is Allahabad town, lived here for many years as a grihasta and a businessman. And he served here many years. He did a lot of service. And so he took us to the Gaudiya Math by rickshaw. These are the deities. That's Yamuna Devi on the left. Does everyone know Yamuna Devi? Yes. Something? We're fortunate to live as her closest neighbor in a farm community called Sharanagati in British Columbia in Canada. And there were 5 girls that she trained in all the devotional arts. And one of them was our daughter, Hari Priya. And that was invaluable for the girls. So the next stop was Benares. There was a parade going on. Prabhupada was drawn through the streets in a chariot pulled by white horses. And this is a cart also being pulled through the streets. And that's Jaipataka Swami on the lower left. Do you recognize him? Jaipataka Swami. This is probably one of the closest pictures we'll ever see of Prabhupada. This is also taken from a movie frame. And then we went to Mumbai, and this was the famous Cross Maidan Pandal program, where thousands of people every day would come and hear Prabhupada speak, and there'd be exhibits of preaching around the world. And you can see many. Actually, can we turn the lights, maybe these lights, the front lights off? Or do they all go off? That's better. Yeah. Many thousands of people. This is the pandal where Prabhupada asked Gurudas to come down off the stage and go to the very back of the audience and ask a Western sadhu to come on stage and sit next to him. Does anybody know who that was? Yeah? Yes, Radhanath Swami Maharaj. And you can see how many people there were. He was way in the back. So how did Prabhupada know? Krishna told him. That's Yamuna Devi. Again, that thousands of people come, they'd never seen this, Western Vaishnavas chanting and dancing and happy. So Prabhupada was speaking. Actually, two other godbrothers came and met Prabhupada at that pandal for the first time. They didn't all speak to him, but Radhanath Swami did. Another one was Lokanath Swami, His Holiness Lokanath Swami. That was his first introduction to Hare Krishna. Also, Dadiharta Prabhu, he was a devotee from Canada. And he remembers that he listened to Prabhupada's lecture, but he couldn't understand anything. But one message came through, and that was surrender. He couldn't do that then, but he did so later. And then there was the last day of the pandal, there was a marriage ceremony on stage. And this is Vedivyas Prabhu from Sweden and his wife from Australia. And Prabhupada was very proud of this union of different nationalities. And he said, this is the real United Nations. Haribol. And when the crowd heard that, everyone cheered. Hari Haribol. And Subal Swami performed the ceremony. And you can see that Western sadhu in the back upper left corner. It's a little hard to see, but that's Radhanath Swami. Do you see? With the long hair? Upper left. So this is proof that he was there. So Jean was back in America wondering what happened to John, and she had published a book called Photomicrography, Art and Techniques by Jean Papert. So she brought that book, she came to India and brought that book and met Prabhupada, and she wanted to do a photographic essay on an Indian village untouched by Western technology. So we didn't know where to go. So we thought, let us ask Prabhupada. He may know where we should go for that project. So we approached Prabhupada and he said, wherever you go, you'll get your cameras stolen and they will cheat you. And then he said, best to go to Vrindavan. So we took a few pictures in Mumbai, our art photography. And before we went to Vrindavan, we went to, this yogi was outside the Cross Maidan, Pandal. Before we went to Vrindavan, we went to Nepal, to the mountains, beautiful mountains. It was the summer of 1971. And taking pictures wherever we went. And we found a beautiful valley at 10,000 feet in the mountains. And we stayed there for 5 days. And I brought one book with me, and that was the Bhagavad Gita as it is. And Jean started to read that book. And she was very intrigued by the idea that she may be something other than the body. She was thinking like, this is amazing information. So that started a little spark of interest. And then we came back down to Vrindavan, and Jean would love to sit in Vrindavan, especially in the temples, and take photographs of the widows chanting all day. And she was very moved by their sincerity and their devotion. So that also helped her in her progress in Krishna consciousness. So we stayed there for a month. It was a very beautiful time of year. And then we went to Calcutta to help produce the Vyasa Puja book for Prabhupada. And from Calcutta, Prabhupada took us to Delhi for another big program. And then he took us to Vrindavan for a tour, the first tour of Vrindavan that the devotees had with Prabhupada. And while in Vrindavan, we were both married. I had taken initiation in Calcutta, and Jean wasn't ready for that, but her consciousness was transformed by living in the Dham. That's actually a very important part of our devotional practice, is to live in the Dham, in the Dhams, in the holy places. So we only have this one picture. I just remember my younger daughter, Hari Priya, she was just married last November, a year ago November. There's hundreds of pictures and videos and everything. And we have one picture. And we only have this picture because Malati had the presence of mind to ask Jean, ask Vishaka where her camera was. So she ran to get it, and she took this one picture. Now Prabhupada is not in the picture, unfortunately, but he's on the Vyasa-san on the left-hand side. Yeah. So we started our service of photographing Prabhupada. You can see Jean Vishaka Devi, now Vishaka, with her camera. And she was one of the very few privileged ladies to be able to come in all the walks and be up front and take pictures. So Prabhupada gave us a really wonderful tour of Vrindavan. And he took us to a place called Brahmagat, where this is where Mother Yasoda saw the universe in baby Krishna's mouth. When he was explaining that pastime, his eyes got really big, and he was completely absorbed in the pastime. And we went swimming in the Yamuna at that very spot, Brahmagat. Prabhupada was hesitant to come in, but finally he joined us. And this is Dr. O.B.L. Kapoor, Prabhupada's godbrother. Very nice man. We met him when we first came to Vrindavan for that 1 month. And this is in Varshana. We were carrying Prabhupada in a palanquin up and down the steep steps. This is in Jaipur. The Queen of Jaipur, Gayatri Devi, hosted all the devotees in Prabhupada. Sometimes we think that Prabhupada wasn't very successful in his preaching before he came to America, but actually he was very successful with the upper class people. He only made one disciple, but he cultivated the intellectual class and the leaders and the teachers and important people. So Gayatri Devi was one of them. So Prabhupada had a great effect, and when we went back to India, we were invited to their homes for prasadam, and even in Jaipur, full accommodation. This is Prabhupada getting a massage in Juhu. We came back to Mumbai, and this is where Vishaka Devi and I served for 2 years. When there was no temple, there was only a hut. You've heard of the early days here, I'm sure. Very austere. And this is Prabhupada at the installation of the groundbreaking ceremony for the new temple. So we spent 2 years in Juhu, and finally there was a letter that came from Krsna Prabhu, from the head of the BBT, that he wanted a film on ISKCON. There were no movies about ISKCON. Today we have so many movies. There was nothing then, so he asked Prabhupada if he could do that, request us. And Prabhupada liked the idea. In fact, he gave $16,000 from his book fund for the film, for equipment and tickets around the world. And so Prabhupada knew the value of media. And we produced the Hare Krishna People movie. And that was released in Prabhupada's room in Mayapur, premiered in Prabhupada's room in Mayapur. Prabhupada's room in Mayapur is very, very small. And there were, all the sannyasis and the GBC and the temple presidents and, devotees looking in through the window. And the Prabhupada liked that film very much. He asked us to make more films. He actually said, you use good psychology in making this film. I should have asked Prabhupada what he meant by that, but I take it that we tried to make it to be acceptable by anyone, including the public. So Prabhupada encouraged us, he said, distribute this film widely, and from the profits make more films. So this is the equipment we were using in that time. Very big and bulky, and there's padding around the camera to keep it quiet. Today we have none of those problems, with just a little cell phone with better resolution. And this is the audio recorder that Vishakadevi used. The audio and the video were separate. And this is the editing system that we used. It was just hand cranking the film through the viewer, the movie scope. So you could never crank it at the right speed, 24 frames a second. So there's a lot of guesswork in the editing, where to make the cuts and the edits. So Howard Wheeler helped us with the narration. Howard Wheeler is Hayagriva Prabhu. If you ever get a chance to read a book by Hayagriva Prabhu, please do, because he's a great writer. He wrote a book called Hare Krishna Explosion, and also Vrindavan Days. So this was 1973 that we were filming, and this is the BBT warehouse in Los Angeles with all the books stored up to be shipped worldwide. This is only 6 or 7 years after Prabhupada started. Just an incredible achievement. Books, millions of books being printed and shipped all over the world. With our own forklift and air containers, and we tried to capture as many scenes as we could. Again, Prabhupada meeting very important people. This is the chief minister of UP. And one of the scenes in the movie was the cows running down the hill in New Vrindavan. And we shot this in slow motion. So the cows are kind of floating down the hill. So when Prabhupada saw this, he said, the cows are floating. Can you fix that? I don't think Prabhupada had ever seen slow motion. So we explained that this is a technique, a special effect technique. And Prabhupada accepted us. He said, then it is all right. This is the last scene of the movie, Prabhupada dancing at the installation of the deities at the Bhaktivedanta Manor in London. So my father very kindly donated this editing table for the movies, and then also a new camera for further films. So the next movie that we produced was called Brilliant as the Sun. And Prabhupada requested this film. Actually, he requested something to show his godbrothers at the Mayapur Festival in 1976, that he was doing the work of his spiritual master in printing and distributing books. So we decided to make this film tracing one shloka of the Bhagavatam from being spoken by Prabhupada, typed up, and this is the shloka that we follow all the way through the film to the final printing in the book. This Bhagavat Purana is as brilliant as the sun. Very famous verse. Do you know this verse? Very famous verse. It's from first canto. Does anyone know where? I thought it was here, but first canto? Anyway, look it up. It's a very wonderful verse. Bhagavat Purana is as brilliant as the sun and is risen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. So we showed all the different steps of the book production in Los Angeles. Bro, could we turn the AC down? And for each step of the book production, there was a checklist that a mark would be put when that particular step was finished. This devotee was a very, very fast typist. So she typed up all the text, put it on this cassette, and Archita Prabhu would put it in that machine in the back, and it would print out all the pages. And then there were many paintings being painted at the time. And we followed one painting through the initial conception to the final completion. And then the paintings were photographed and then sent to the layout artist for resizing to the proper size for the front of the book. So this is all very time-consuming and tedious, resizing and photographing and developing. And the same thing with filmmaking. It was very cumbersome. Now everything can be done on a computer very quickly and easily, and all movies can be taken on cell phones. And it's amazing how far the technology has come. And then finally, the printing of the book. And then the book shipped all over the world. And then we show different reviews by prominent professors from America, from very big universities, Princeton, Yale, Harvard University. And the final scene of the movie is Yadubara Prabhu, a very famous book distributor, distributing a copy of the Bhagavatam with that verse, and preaching about that verse to this businessman. Of course, the businessman was also a devotee. We could hear their conversation. We had a wireless microphone. And that's the final scene of the movie. They're discussing the Bhagavatam on the street corner of Los Angeles. And today, there's book distributors all over the world distributing Prabhupada's books. There's one devotee, his name is Yadubara Prabhu. You may have heard of him. He distributes hundreds and hundreds of big books every day. You've heard of him? Mahotsava. He did 1,400 big books in one day. How is that possible? And so this film we took to Mayapur, and there was a new technology. This little machine came out. It was like a projector and a screen all in a briefcase, in a businessman's briefcase. So we took that to Prabhupada and showed him the film. He was very happy with it. And I sat in Prabhupada's room every day when visitors would come. And even if one person came in, he would speak to them, greet them, and chat with them. And then he finally turned to me and he said, "You have that movie." So I would bring out this projector, set it up, and in 30 seconds, the guest was watching the movie. And something called a Fairchild projector. These were used all over the world to make life members at that time. So the next film was a request. Prabhupada wanted this film also. A documentary on New Vrindavan, the first farm community in America. And Mangalananda Prabhu he composed the music for the film. Prabhupada liked his music very much. A genius composer and lyricist and musician. So taking different scenes, we put the camera on the ground and had the horses drive over it. And then we turned it around from the reverse position. And then just beautiful summer scenes in New Vrindavan. Of course, in the winter it gets very cold. There's lots of snow. And Prabhupada was very proud of the cows in New Vrindavan. Some of them would give 10 gallons of milk per day. That's 40 or 50 liters. Huh?
5 liters is a
Buy
guarantee.
it. No, it's less. It's actually less. It's 4. Yeah. So anyway, 40 liters and more, actually. Amazing. This is a trick shot. We put a piece of glass on the camera too. And we showed a calf being born. And when Prabhupada saw these puris being cooked, he rose up out of Vyasasana. He said, "I want one." And this is the beginning of Prabhupada's Palace of Gold. You may have heard of that. It's a very famous tourist destination in West Virginia. It started out as Govindaji Temple, as Prabhupada won 7 temples in New Vrindavan. But Kirtananda Swami decided to make a home for Prabhupada first. And all the work was done by devotees. Beautiful palace. You've probably seen pictures, huh? Yeah. Beautiful deities, Radha Vrindavan Chandra. And the last scene of the movie was, I was in a helicopter flying over the hills of West Virginia. Big Harinam below us. I wish I had a drone at that time. It would have been much easier and less expensive. The technology is just incredible. And the final film that Prabhupada saw, we made quite a few films, but he saw 4 of them, was Spark of Life. And this was a film requested by the Bhaktivedanta Institute, the scientific preaching branch of ISKCON. They wanted a film to defeat the materialist argument that life comes from matter. But we know that life comes from life. So we decided to do a drama. It was our first dramatic attempt. And we had 2 college students, both devotees. One was taking a biology class where he was learning all the atheistic theories of how life comes from matter. And the person on the left was taking a religious course, and he was studying Bhagavad Gita. And he was very enthusiastic to share his knowledge with his friend. So it was a dialogue back and forth. And this is the professor, Yadubara Prabhu, teaching the atheistic theories. And they did really a good job. You know, the atheistic theory that life comes from matter, from a combination of chemicals and heat and rays, and finally a single cell unit appears suddenly, miraculously. It's all based on chance, and they haven't done it. They haven't created life. So what I learned Actually, what I learned in university as to the structure of the atom is no longer accepted. So what I learned was somebody's theory. It wasn't knowledge. So how do we feel, about that? So much learning is based on theoretical ideas and not, proof, not real knowledge. So it's basically cheating. They can't do it, but they claim that this is true. Cheater. Prabhupada said, anyway, the cheaters and the cheated. So this is his biology class. And then we show different scenes, different special effects scenes, breaking down the body into different parts, the bones and the blood, the vessels and the nerves and the muscles, looking for the soul. So where is the soul? You can't identify it, you can't see it. Where is the soul? Another scene in the movie is a montage showing the growth of the body from birth to death. And we just show the hands going through life. School, marriage, old age, and finally death. And then we show an operating room, and the person on the table has died. So they're trying to bring him back to life with different methods. So they try the pressing on the chest, they try injections, they try electric shock, and nothing they can do. They can't do anything to bring the soul back. So we say that once the soul leaves the body, there's nothing they can do to bring it back. And then there's a funeral scene. Everyone mourning for the body. The person is left. The body is just a lump of chemicals. But that's who they think the person is. There's so much wasted land in America with graveyards. Cremation is the best solution. So finally, this person who's studying the atheistic theories, finally he's convinced that life comes from life. Just observing everything around him, the amazing different variety of species of life, and the incredible complexity of life. There's no chance that it could come about by chance. So happy ending. And this is the ending also of our presentation. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much for your attentive listening. Do you have any questions?
I had a question.
Yeah.
So you heard about the Surat when the devotees were there. That was something different. The whole streets were, what was the feeling at that point of time? The whole streets were crowded, everybody was welcoming Hare Krishnas. And that was new because devotees were foreign bodied in that sense.
Yeah.
And they were going. So
Completely new. It was people were amazed. They were kind of bewildered. How did this happen? They were proud. They were all kinds of different emotions. But it was an amazing time. Prabhupada is India's greatest ambassador, spiritual ambassador to the world. Nobody has done what Prabhupada's done. There's others who are people thinking are the greatest spiritual ambassadors, but they're not. They didn't do much at all. If you read the speech by Vivekananda in his Chicago address, I think in the 1930s or 20s, nothing substantial. It's what the other religionists wanted to hear. Nothing about Krishna, nothing about reincarnation. So Prabhupada should be recognized as such. And he will, eventually. So yeah, Surat was an amazing time, because I was used to photographing the devotees in New York City, where people were just, they couldn't figure out what was going on. To see, devotees, bright, shiny, happy faces jumping up and down. You never saw that in the big cities. Rather, you saw morose people, working 8 and 10 hours, traveling so far, pollution. So it was a revolution. Yeah. Spiritual revolution. So it's wonderful to be a part of it. It's a great adventure. Not only to see what's happening outside, but also internally in our hearts as we progress. You're on a very exciting journey. Don't give it up. There's really nothing else out there. I've looked at it. I've tried. It didn't work. Could save a lot of time by not going out there, trying to enjoy. Yes.
So when at that time you were using the latest technology and tools.
Can you speak louder?
At that time we were using the latest technology and latest, I think, that time whatever the technology was available, that time we were using the cameras and all. So how, like, we were getting the money, and what was the attitude of Prabhupada that time towards those technology? Like, he was supporting fully, or?
Yeah, he was the executive producer of our first film. Executive producer means, and we didn't give him that title, we should have. But the executive producer means the financier, person who gives the money, generally, for the movie. So Prabhupada was, he was the producer. And he understood the value of movies. Look at today, people are just mad after movies. And so the same, old themes churned out over and over again, chewing the chewed. But still, they thrive on it. It's a huge, huge industry. Billions of dollars spent making the films, billions of dollars spent advertising the films, billions of dollars seeing the films. So we need filmmakers. And any good film starts with a script, a good script. We need writers. I'm often asked, about a film on the Mahabharata, a film on the Ramayana, especially in Mahabharata. There's so many different stories. But you need to translate that to the film language, film medium. You can't just take it from the Bhagavatam and like that. You need to create a wonderful story. The basics are there, the stories are there, but it needs to be adapted for film. Are there any writers in the group today? Yes?
I'm a poet.
Poet. Nice. Yeah. So we need good writers. Any good film starts with a good script. That's why there's so many bad films. Story, and Prabhupada's story, actually, the Hare Krishna movie was accepted, wonderfully all over the world. My wife and I traveled to premieres in different places in the world, to South Africa, to Botswana, to Mauritius, to London, to Amsterdam. Anyway, everywhere people came. outside people. In Amsterdam, there are about 200 devotees and about 200 outsiders. In Tucson, Arizona, there was practically all retired people, old people, because it's a retirement community. And people had, these are people who had gotten books in the 60s and 70s, had seen the devotees, and they're curious. They came out and watched the film. And one person came up to me afterwards. They said, "Do you recognize me?" And I looked at her. I said, "No, I don't." And then she said, "I'm Palika." And we served together here in Juhu. She was Bhavananda's wife, Palika. So anyway, it brought her out. She nobody knew where she was, pretty much, for a long time. She was one of Prabhupada's cooks. So anyway, the film has been very successful, and Prabhupada's story is very dramatic, right? It's an amazing story. Started with nothing, no friends, no support, no money. Who would do that to get on an ocean liner at age 70? There's one big motivational speaker. What's his name? Vivek, maybe. Yeah. He says Prabhupada is the greatest example of a success story. Because and Prabhupada's story follows the classical arc of a hero. In other words, the hero gets an assignment which he considers very difficult, and he waits for some time to try to execute it. Finally, he tries, and he goes to make, and has a little success, but then there's big reverses. Prabhupada's heart attack, and you don't think he's going to survive. But he pushes on, and there's more success. Another downturn, pushes on. He doesn't stop. And there's many times that Prabhupada could have stopped, but he didn't. And finally, there's great success. It's called the hero's journey. It's a classical pattern through all the different cultures of the world. They have stories with this kind of theme. So, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Can you please share your experience when you first time visited Vrindavan?
When I first went to Vrindavan, well, it's a different atmosphere. You could feel the difference in atmosphere. Prabhupada said that. He said, if you go to Vrindavan, you can feel the potency of the Dham. So we felt that. And just living there, we made advancement. You can just live there. You don't have to do much and make spiritual advancement. Of course, we try to do as much as we can for our progress. There's a question there?
First of all, thank you, Prabhuji, for showing us wonderful picture and making movie of Prabhupada. Also, I would like to understand from you that you use your talent of photography and to become a good devotee. And also now we are also getting inspired to see these photographs. So can you tell us what prompted you to, you didn't think about financial at that time you were going into professional movie making rather than sticking with Prabhupada?
Well, I did think about financial, and I actually tried to work outside with a big production company called Canon Films. So the first day on the job, I was asked to be the assistant editor. And I walked into the main editing to meet the main editor, and they were working on a drug sex film, and also smoking ganja. And that was my last day on the job. So as I say, there's nothing out there. Anything else?
Yeah, I want to ask you,
Hmm.
how did you manage about this fundraising? How did you manage to get this so much of funds in terms of financial support?
Well, Prabhupada supported us to make that first film. Prabhupada supported us to make that first film. He gave all the money. But after that was produced, we made a good income selling films, distributing all these films. And films were expensive then. A half-hour film on the retail market, 16mm film, was $400. Now, and that was a 30-minute film. Today, a 30-minute video, you can't, pay somebody to get it for pennies. So, the times have changed a lot. It's not so easy to make money in the business these days. But back then, film was. And Prabhupada, he said, when I told him how much a film was, he said, that is not very much. Because he was considering the value of the film that we made. And that film actually went to all over the world. Devotees purchased it and used those machines to show it, for making life members, for getting donors, and a big jump in donations and support. Yes.
Having working on film and now everything is digital. So how do you perceive cellulite material and now digital domains? What's the difference and what the future you see?
Well, the difference in digital is that you can immediately execute what you want. It's very, very fast. Back then, if I wanted to do a dissolve between two scenes, I would have to mark on the film itself, on the work print, with a grease pencil, the length of the dissolve, where it was in the film. Then I have to send it to the lab to make a copy of that. Then I have to wait to get it developed and then see it. Today you can do a dissolve in seconds. So all that was very expensive at that time. Yeah. And who knows the future? I mean, the future is a little scary because they can now make a person stand in front of a camera. You can put the AC on. It's completely off now.
Temperature control is
Huh?
not there. Temperature control is not there.
Yeah, what they can do now with cameras, they have somebody standing in front of the camera, and they look like someone else. They look and speak like someone else. Anyone. The President of the United States, anyone. So that's a little frightening. Yeah. Also, there's a phone coming out where they can embed a chip in your head and then control the phone through your mind. Have you heard of that? Is it true?
No, it's in development.
Huh?
It's in development.
It's in development. Anyway, they're working on it. Yeah. Time to get out. Time to get out. So anyway, we actually have all our films on a pen drive if anyone's interested. We just released this. Madhava Prabhu's a media person. He's been distributing our films for many decades. So this is his production. Everything on a little pen drive with an adapter for your phone. So if you'd like something like that, see me afterwards. We can talk about it. So thank you very much.
So one question.
Yeah.
One advice for everyone of how we advance in Krishna consciousness, because you have been practicing for so many years, through ups and downs, through challenging times.
Yeah, it's a long journey. It takes patience. One of the three important items in devotional service is patience. There's enthusiasm, there's determination, and patience. Patience is the hardest. because it just takes a long time to, generally, for us to become Krishna conscious. It may take lifetimes, but still, it's a wonderful culture to live in. As long as we, behave ourselves and don't make offenses. And the advice is to become pure in heart and mind. Don't do anything that's going to pollute your heart and mind. Although the temptation is always there, practically. We have these bodies, we have these machines that are meant for different functions in this material world. And they'll be demanding to use it. But, and that may have to go on. But in the Vedic way, not in the way of the cats and dogs, as Prabhupada said. Always trying to follow the Vedic principles and become pure in heart and mind. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
So we'd like to thank Yadubara Prabhu for this wonderful taking us to Prabhupada's times and showing us this beautiful presentation. So we loudly chant Hare Krishna 3 times. Hare Krishna, Hare